As publishers, we all know the way to reach an audience is by anticipating demand and getting ahead of its peak by providing timely value. However, do AI-assisted features help aid the user's journey to purchase? As part of the special WordPress 7-part Teardown series, Jeremy Fremont and Vahe Arabian explore Macworld, your source for all things Apple and one of the leading industry news sites. Over to you guys.
Hi guys, and welcome to the Saturday Publishing's special WordPress Teardown podcast edition. I've got with me Jeremy Fairmont from Multidots, and so we're starting off with Macworld. So, what is Macworld? We can see from the web. I've got the page up, and I guess what we can see here is everything related to the world of Apple, providing news, deals, reviews, and tips around their respective products. Now let's go a little bit more deep dive. Jeremy, what did you notice when you started to look into Macworld itself?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things I always love doing is checking out different websites and just being able to understand, what they're doing well and what could they use as far as some improvement. And so on Macworld, I've only myself entered into the Apple world over the course of about the last year. And so this isn't a website that I've spent a huge amount of time on. But I know that there's a huge amount of people around the world, right, who are Mac advocates. So anything and everything Mac, they're going to love. They're going to want to consume all of this information. So I believe, right, Macworld.com is one of the largest publishers in the space. There's a few other competitors, but they're one of the big 800-pound gorillas. Would you agree?
Yeah, they're the top three, and we'll definitely show some of the stats soon about that as well. I think they're in the top three of the.
And are you personally a Mac user yourself, Vahe?
I'm not, but we're WordPress fans, so they're on WordPress, so we're going to be looking at the website as a result. So
absolutely. So you're going to be hearing it directly from the source of two people who are not into the Mac world as much as you who are listening to this, but let's dive on in, and I'm excited to tear down the website directly with you. So one of the first things that we obviously see here at the top is there's a lot of different topics, right? So they break it down into their silos. So if people want to understand more about the iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch, right, they can get into their silo of information, which is quick and easy to be able to understand. And then they've, of course, got that bar, the hot topics, right? Some of the other things that are going to be more of the latest trend, such as the Vision Pro that has recently come out, which a lot of people are going to be interested about. And that's going to be more of a one-off, right? It hasn't earned its position up top. And then, of course, we've got the English edition. So it looks like they have a few different languages, I would imagine.
Yep, they've got UK, English, and Spanish. So they've even factored in English targeting that isn't, because sometimes what publishers might assume is that just because you're on a .com, you can target both UK and English, but it seems like they generally also want to target UK as well. So that, yeah, they've set up themselves for that, and then the Spanish.
That makes sense. Could you click on the English UK one, and does it go to a .co.uk as far as the URL extension?
No.
Okay.
It's
/en-gb. Okay. So it's still on the same exact site, but I would wonder how much of the content changes and shifts, because the product releases might be slightly different directly in the UK versus the product releases that are going to be coming out maybe in the States. So that'd be an interesting thing to also explore, how much content has adjusted from one to the next. If we just scroll down, how much of their content is going to be fueled directly by ads? I'd be curious. So we've got the one ad on the right-hand side. What other ad spots? We've got that big airplane ad choice that's showing up. So some programmatic advertising that's showing.
Yep. I'm curious to see as well what the ad density is as well. So let me just quickly fire that up. Yeah, so generally, I can use a Chrome extension called ad density, and that can really give us a good indication of whether or not the viewport density has been over 30% or not. This uses the IAB standards to assess whether or not there's been any interruption to the user experience, which is going to be very important.
Absolutely. And we got to be thinking about, Core Web Vitals and everything along those lines. If there's a lot of CLS that's happening when the ads are loaded, this is a great plugin to be aware of. So anybody who's listening to the podcast, it is directly on Google Chrome, your browser extension. and it is just called ad density. There is no space between the ad and then density, DENSITY. So it'll give you a wealth of information when you're checking out different websites, specifically publisher sites that have advertising as part of their revenue generation model. So what are we finding here, Vahe?
We can see here that they're almost hitting the maximum 26%. It's fluctuating between 30 to 60% because particularly the right-hand side corner is overtaking a lot of the. There's not as much content, and there's this block. There's the block between the article. There's the right-hand side, and then there's also the ad layout at the bottom. So particularly with the homepage, they're pretty much, because they're probably getting the most traffic to this page. They're trying to really maximize the monetization for that. So it is causing high ad density, which might be intrusive to the user experience.
Okay. And what would happen if somebody goes over that 30% mark in their ad density? What would happen if somebody has, like, let's say 40% ad density? What would that do negatively directly for the website itself?
Look, I mean, there's not, this is all correlation, right? We can't say like, if you go across this percentage, then it's going to cause this automatically. But we've seen I've seen as well, particularly where there's been other ad networks where when they've overdone that and there's been the helpful content update, that it does definitely result in a drop in some of the rankings because of the perceived quality of the content and how users interact within the page as well, that pogo sticking effect that maybe people might have with jumping on the page and going back, and maybe that's not also that perceived irrelevancy might determine that the content quality isn't as good. So yeah, it's always going to be a balance between maximizing my revenue with ad layouts and getting people to the direct articles and destination that they want to go.
Yeah, so that's a very important point. So if you're thinking about starting a publication website yourself, or if you're a publisher, right, there's always these rules of thumb. And one of those rules of thumbs that's a big takeaway is ad density, right? So if you haven't heard that term before, be conscious of it. So keep your ad density to less than 30%. That's the rule of thumb that's learned here. Otherwise, you're going to negatively hurt your user experience. And any search engine, regardless if that's Google, Yahoo, Bing, right? They care about ensuring that the websites that they're ranking high organically within their search traffic is going to be good for a user experience. So that rule of thumb, if it's over 30% ad density, you're going to give yourself, as far as the users visiting your site, a negative ad or negative experience on your site. So great rule of thumb and a good call out. Thanks there, Vahe.
No worries. Let's get
dive
further. I think we mixed up. We saw the there was a feature that we saw here. I think it was called the AI. What was it again? The AI search.
Oh yeah, there's a little search functionality. Let's go back. We are on the UK edition, so it might only be on certain editions, right? With all of anything in Europe, you've got a lot more stringent laws when it comes down to GDPR, privacy around data. So there's some experiments that actually take place in different markets. So if you are in the process of going through and you are serving a worldwide audience, as you're doing different experiments, it might be something that you are paying attention to in order to be able to get the most. So here it is right on the screen. It's called Smart Answers from Macworld, and it is an AI-powered search functionality. So if we click on this little eye indicator, what does it tell us about it?
They're trying to create a experience where, yeah, basically they're gathering a lot of different types of, like typically in the search results, they only show like the list of article results, but which we'll see now as we use it ourselves. They are using a bunch of not only articles, but the different products and other contextual information that can give them the best answer using generative AI.
That's amazing. So one thing that's great to see as far as a publisher is that Macworld, even though they've been around for so long, publishing so many stories, that they're diving right on in, right? You don't see AI-powered search functionality on that many websites as of yet, even though AI has been around for a while, but it's made a big splash, right, over the course of the last year. So it's great to see that they're using the latest trends. So let's just do a little search, right? What are you interested about that comes to mind that you would like to learn more about, that we'd like to test out the search on the page?
Jeremy, I want to throw back to you because you're the newest Mac user amongst us. So what's been some of the friction points that you've experienced when trying to get used to your MacBook?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things that I needed to get used to was the ability to be able to drag and drop windows, and I like to be able to throw a window, and it would take up half of the screen. So that was something on a Windows that I was very used to. And another one is I needed to adjust some of the keyboard shortcuts. The Command versus Control tab were two things that took me a little bit of time in order to be able to get used to. That
Yep.
I'd be curious to see what they say. On Macworld? Do they have any intelligent answers? Is AI useful enough in order to be able to give me the directions that I need to be able to make some of these adjustments to dive deeper into the Macworld myself and being an Apple user? And the thing is, I've been an iPhone user forever, right? Ever since the original iPhone came out. But the Mac computer, let's see what they say about changing some of the keyboard shortcuts.
So we've got the same challenge here as well with the ad density being a bit too strong, but yeah. Okay. So it's giving us a, I'm going to zoom out a little bit just because of the ad experience. Okay. It's giving us a direct answer and it's providing us some citations.
Okay.
So they've got a few posts, I believe. So one around this one, the funny URL. Okay. So useful Mac Ops keyboard shortcuts to help you work faster. Let me just quickly jump back and see what the actual answer was to see the relevancy of that. The change keyboard shortcuts is different ways of doing that. This is how you go to this step. It's interesting. What do you see? How do you feel like the results are, the answers are from this based on your experience with changing shortcuts? Is this accurate for you, or do you feel like that is this too generic?
It's too generic. I mean, we did ask a very specific question. I think let's scroll down and see if it gives me any other helpful articles or anything. I think it's going to be very hard for AI to generate what I want to change. So what else does it have down below?
So for the prices and deals for keyboard, which is interesting.
All
It's
right.
got the article results as well.
Trying to sell me a keyboard. All right, there we go. Some affiliate income coming in there.
Yeah.
Always good from publisher standpoint.
Exactly.
All right, and then it has a whole bunch of related articles that are being shown up underneath, and then related questions to explore. And then I could also ask a follow-up question, right? So similar to a chat GPT experience, right? You can continue to interact directly with the AI. So yes, it's very likely, that they are utilizing the OpenAI API here in order to be able to learn a little bit more and have the interaction through Macworld. So let's try. I don't know if you remember that exact same thing that you searched, but I'd be curious now if we go back to their generic search, does all of their search interact with AI? Because I know there was another search functionality at the top of the page, or does the search functionality at the top of the page have different types of results?
Okay, so there's auto suggest that's coming up already to change.
Okay.
Keyboard shortcut.
So that's also an important thing, right? If you're having a search functionality, that can be helpful tips to be able to provide the user some results. So now when we're on this search results page, so it seems like there's two different search functionalities that are happening here, right? Which is interesting. So this looks more like just a generic search result that's going to be very similar to a Google web search experience that is showing up. So they're not using AI.
Custom search engine. Yeah, it looks like it's the Google custom search engine functionality.
Okay. So that'd be one thing that I'd say, missed opportunity. If you're testing out AI and it's just a temporary test for your search results, you probably get more data more quickly to see if it's useful or not, to change all of the search areas of your site into utilizing AI. But maybe this is a simple A/B test that they're doing, right? And that could be good as well in order to be able to see, are people just not getting the quality of the search that they want from their AI enhanced search versus the more standard and generic search. But good to be able to compare both on this site. You want to dive back into some of the tools? Let's see kind of the history of this site. How long has it been around? Let's see some of the traffic, the rankings that they've got. That'd be really interesting to see as well.
Let's do it. You know me, I like going back and figuring these things out. So, okay, let's look at, again, let's validate the fact that there are top publisher in the Apple and Mac publishing space. So we're looking at SimilarWeb. I mean, it seems like the general industry is a bit more quieter during this type of year because there's the MacBook, the Apple event that typically takes place in September. It's probably tapering a bit after its peak. So I think that's expected. You're seeing all the competitors go down, but yeah, they're in the top three for sure because they're almost on the same page as 9 to 5 Mac, and above them is just Mac Rumors, and there's the other sites like that, like Apple Insider that also covers that. So probably other niche sites are less traffic in there, and then PC Mac is a bit too general to compare against, but they probably have a Mac section, and that's why they're coming up in this benchmark with SimilarWeb now.
Yeah, and a good amount of traffic. So those numbers you were just talking about, those are approximately number of users who are coming to the site each month, right?
Correct. Yeah, exactly. So this screenshot from SimilarWeb, which is a competitor intelligence tool, that it's a freemium tool. You can just get a top level lowdown of some of the benchmarking that they're doing themselves here. You can see some of that initial information here, but then it's a bit more costly. You can buy a subscription and see a lot more deeper data that's showing in here. But yeah, I mean, we can definitely validate that it's a top niche performing website.
Absolutely.
But what sort of, yeah, I mean, so I'm going to jump onto Ahrefs, which is a more SEO it's an SEO competitor research and backlinking tool. It's, SEO is the core of what I am, my background is and what I do. And we can see here that, right, so we saw that in archive.org. I won't jump around too much on the tabs just to make it a bit more digestible, but we're seeing here the past 5 years, but they've been around since 1997, and they've been around for a long time, yeah. And we can see that relatively, they had the same traffic trends. Then all of a sudden,
you're looking for anybody who's just listening to the podcast. We're looking around about 1 million or so hits to their website back for quite a stretch for many years. Not a huge amount of spikes. No big decreases, kind of just plateau, just a little bit up, a little bit down for many years. And it looks like there's a big spike that's happening on the graph. About what time did they see that spike in traffic?
Yes, so from April 2022 to June, July, they saw the first uptick in the traffic from 941 to almost 2.5 million to 2.3 million.
Wow.
They then sort of plateaued for, like, they went a bit up and down in that period, and then again around that same period they went from 2.3 up to, I think, almost 4 million. So they almost doubled their traffic within those periods, and so it's pretty interesting.
Then the last spike is happening in about a year later, right? In 2023. So the first one was 2022, and then the top of the charts there is September 2023. So I mean, we're talking about doubling in the amount of traffic that was going on. And I'm just doing a quick search on my side as well, and it looks like around 2022, there's a core Google algorithm update that took place between the 25th of May and June 9th, which looks like it kind of also corresponds with that. So I'd imagine having really quality content, more long form articles also probably was a big helpful item that allowed them to be able to increase some of the traffic. You have any thoughts of what would have caused kind of a big, almost double of their traffic increase during some of those periods?
Yeah, they're 4x in like pretty much 1.5 years, and I guess there's pretty clear signs of what made that happen. Sorry, I'll go back to Macworld and I'll show you guys quickly now archive.web.
Okay.
Because that gives you a clear indication. I mean, there's two things that happened. I think the first thing as well was they got bought out by Foundry.
So their parent company is Foundry.
The parent company is Foundry, and I think that also led to a change in the direction of the strategy to focus more on evergreen and on a lot of the deals content that they have. So I want to quickly show everyone that's watching the video the changes of their website during that period, and then we'll try our best as we can for our podcast listeners to articulate this as well. But when you look at 2022 we look at around April before they actually made the change, before that sort of uptick happened, we saw on Mac.world now how they have, one second, let me just let this load.
And one of the things, just for everybody who's listening to this is going to be utilizing a free tool. Anybody can utilize it. It's on archive.org. It's called the Wayback Machine. So think of it as a time machine that actually exists. It's a time machine that exists directly for the internet. So if you want to see anything that was published, a previous version of a site, you'd be able to actually see what that website looks like at that particular date and stamp that is on archive.org. So it's a free tool. Go check it out. It's absolutely amazing. If you want to do some internet sleuthing and pretend you're a detective for some time, it's a lot of fun.
Indeed. No, thanks for that, Jeremy. So you can see here that you can see how fundamentally different the navigation is and sort of what the emphasis is on. So what I think has really changed quite a bit is, it's the way that they've realized the strategy in terms of the product launches and how to utilize that, and then also incorporating evergreen content to really grow their traffic. So you can see here that during 2022, before all that stuff happened, they just generally had random links in the hot topics section where it's what it's called now, with the best Mac activities to maybe give it some juice. But when you look at the news section now, you can see it's a lot more organized. You can see that even at the top menu navigation versus this one where it has some generic names on some categories, they've gone and more intentionally categorized their content. And even when you go to the best picks as well, they've gone through and started to list a lot of their best product listicles. So they've really delved into their e-commerce, like a lot of the content for e-commerce. So that's one thing. And then I'm just jumping back into Ahrefs now, just to show our video listener, sorry, our podcast video listeners as well, the change in the trajectory as well. So we know that Apple typically launches their new products around September. So we know that there's a editorial cycle that you need to go through so by the time that the traffic peaks around the new announcements, because there's typically leaks that happen in the months beforehand. And so that it seems like from April to that period, they've progressively worked on core evergreen content and just continue to update that and really trying to prime that content to maximize the visibility. So for example, iPhone 15 release date, or when is iOS S7 coming out? So there's a bunch of evergreen release date content features that they might have an initial article around and they keep expanding upon it. They'll cover a lot of different angles around the subject, around the launch of a product. So it might be an announcement around the price hikes. Maybe they initially announced the price hike around this amount and then they changed that before the event. And you can see how very much there's that seasonality to that as well. There's even
and that's a hard thing, right? If you're in a very product focused industry to create evergreen content, but it's an important thing for any publishers listening, right? You don't want to necessarily create just one piece of content and just say, hey, that's it, it's done. You can actually go through and you can update that content, right? And that update is a new signal that that's been something fresh. And those signals directly to search engines can make a big difference directly into your actual traffic numbers. So maybe just like you're saying, Vahe, you might have found a great thing. They might have just published an article previously, not really made updates, and now they're really making it more evergreen because they're saying, hey, let's make some changes, make it updated, make it fresh. So yeah, that's a great call out.
Thanks for that, Jeremy. I think the other secondary lesson to as well is around the clusters and really planning, whether it's news clusters, whether it's evergreen clusters as well, all the different aspects or angles that really help build up like the key categories, like all these topics here. So like you can see here that, for example, on the current version of the website, they have Apple Mini 7, iPhone 16. So we're gonna see probably in the next couple of months a build up of that similar content that we saw for iPhone 15 happening. And so that's a lesson that you can also go back into competitive tools like this to really inform you on the kind of content that's going to work. So whether it's like the difference between various products, iOS updates, prices, all these different aspects, or even the question, when is this coming out, and factoring that into your content refreshers, and going back and constantly updating the pillar content to update that as news content comes, news updates come about. You can anticipate much of this and ensure that you have success, because it's like you said, Jeremy, right? It's pretty competitive. It's not Apple. A lot of people cover Apple and iPhone news, and sort of being able to really get ahead of that is going to what's good. And sorry, as well for our video listeners and watchers, you can see KD metric from Google, from Ahrefs, which is their measure of how difficult it is to rank for a topic / keyword. 0 being easy, 100 being very hard. It's not that easy to really rank for these terms. Like, it's already like above 60 for many of these topics. And so, yeah, you can see here as well, Apple iPhone 15, or Apple, if I'll even look at iPhone 16, it might not be competitive now because there's not much demand for that search. But as it builds up, it's going to become more competitive. So you get ahead, you identify these new searches, you build up the traffic that way, and then you're going to be above the pack once it actually comes out.
Yeah, I mean, there's a wealth of insight you can learn from all of these different tools. So yeah, it's great being able to dive in and really see behind the curtains, if you will.
No, absolutely. But I think as well, like, we know that that's a good growth strategy, but we can, frankly see that there's been a bit of a dip that's happened post September as well, Jeremy. So I think that also would be great. To talk about the monetization side of their website, because I think that's going to be a key factor to really help publishers shift their focus on how to do this same thing, but in a new search generative experience world, a new search world that's happened since September. So yeah,
and that decrease is quite significant, right? It's like a mountain is what we're looking at on our screens. An increase going for about 1 million up, and then an increase going about 1 million down as far as traffic numbers on a monthly basis. So right now they're sitting back about 2.1 million average organic traffic results, which is similar to what they were all the way back in 2022 of June. So yeah, some increases. What goes up must come down. And that's obviously not something you want to look at in your analytics, right? That's not a very good place to be if you're heading the publishing arm directly of Macworld.com. So yes, it's time to be able to make some adjustments. And so what have you seen that some content publishers have been doing that have been really more focused in on 2024 and beyond as far as what's working in today's day and age?
Correct. So I think there's still publishers that are doing a lot of the same things now. So what, particularly in September, Google did, they rolled out a fundamental change in their algorithm, which they factored in the helpful content update, called the helpful content update, and that's factoring in expertise, experience, authoritativeness, and trust. So they're trying to incorporate a lot more of the first perspective aspects of when the content. And so traditional publishers, what they'll do is they found out this strategy that we spoke about, and they'll just go until the cows go home, like in terms of publishing a lot of this type of content. And maybe their editors haven't tested that content before, or they haven't, the way that they're writing is very thin content, but because they're legacy publishers, like i.e. Macworld, they could have gotten away with it in the past. Now they can't. So, we're not saying that you don't do this type of content now, but you have to really think about how to go beyond just providing basic listicles to provide real value to your audience and show your expertise. So, for example, I could tell you some things that they're not doing as best now, and then we can go through some other examples on what other sites are doing well, i.e. CNET. We can show some examples of CNET, what they're doing well. So like we can see here that at the moment with this example of this article, they're mostly just they started to do well in terms of incorporating, changing their writing to their first language. We can't see anything in terms of disclaiming how they actually go about testing these products. A lot of other sites they would go through and articulate that in terms of policies. Sorry, everyone. Let me just bring up that example. So there might be
And one of the things, while you're bringing up this other example, is they've integrated AI search. So who knows? Around that same time, maybe they're starting to play around with AI generated content, right? And a lot of publishers are playing around with AI generated content, and it is an experiment, right? But Google and the other search engines, they might pick up on it, and they might actually put that as a lower quality piece of content. So they might actually derank some of those items. So that could be taking place behind the scenes. We don't know, but they are obviously experimenting with AI. So that might be another thing just for consideration.
Yeah, and sorry, but that's why I'm sorry. That's why I switched my example from CNET to this one, because CNET actually got flagged for that as well. But to give you an idea,
And so now we're on PCMag.com, just
PCMag.
checking out this as far as another competitor. And that competitor is not directly in the Mac space, but they have significantly more traffic, 25 plus million hits to this site each and every single month. So they are an 800-pound gorilla in the publishing space around technology.
Yeah, so what can we learn from these 800-pound gorillas, I guess? You can see here that they do still have a lot of the affiliate linking or lists of the products, but they're able to really classify why these certain products are pretty good in terms of the summaries that they produce. So they're saying, like, for the best laptops, this one is the best one for budget, this one's best one for business, and so forth. So they're immediately providing a lot more signals from the beginning around that, and they're not reducing any need to link to any affiliate deals. And any of the strategies that we're showing you here, like, we're not telling you that you can take away any of that. And so you can see already here that you can trust our reviews, see how editorial, how we test that. They bring a lot of these things at the top before they actually go down deeper and explain why the pros and cons are there. So
more of those trust factors they're putting into place, as you were talking about.
So you can see here, rather than, we can a little bit where we're just more. Yes, it's good that we have first hand writing and language. But we've got a lot more of the padded content here. They've just sort of embedded in here some related questions that's coming from the AI search, which might be useful, but we're not sort of there yet in terms of it's just a lot more padded information and content. So there's that aspect. You see that like you said, they brought everything at the top, and then they're giving you links directly to the individual products itself, so you can go more deeper and review that in deeper article. That's another thing that other publishers haven't done. Like, they'll just only link to the affiliate product to the website, right? So, and also
right.
what also brings more credibility to this list as well is the fact that they are providing awards. A lot more publishers now are increasingly creating their own certification to many of these products as well.
Yeah, so, which always is helpful, right? Everybody likes that certification. And instead of stars, in this case, what we would be looking at is the ranking. They're utilizing dots, so 4.0 excellence rating. So it's really easy to be able to see. Everybody knows, like, 5 stars. When you're in the process of looking for a restaurant, you're going to be judging. You don't want to go to a 2-star restaurant. So you're looking for a 5-star. Same thing when it comes down to evaluating products online, right? You want to be able to do your research, compare different types of laptops, or what is the difference between an iPhone 15 versus an iPhone 16. Same thing. So those reviews are really, really, really important. So yeah, nice clean layout that PC Mag is using across the board. So another
good that you picked that up, because, like we said, like, ad intrusiveness is definitely one aspect as well, that we saw many sites saw a big downward trend in September. They had too much ad density, and you can see a lot of that content that we know people are just going directly and comparing the products. Now they're providing more of the background information if they're ready to read more and understand a bit more about making a decision. They've put everything else at the bottom here. So, and then there's a summary table as well, again, just to reinforce.
And so it looks like PC Mag is utilizing a lot more affiliate links than a Macworld. So that would be another comparison, right? If I was in charge of Macworld as far as a comparison factor, I'd be looking at the revenue. How much revenue is actually being generated directly from the site from the programmatic advertising versus how much revenue is being generated directly from affiliate income that's linking off to different products. And if it's actually worth it to have so much ad density of that 26% as they do now, or if it would actually be a better user experience where they could increase the site traffic by people staying on the site longer, being happier with the experience of navigating around. And if they are, guess what? Then they could increase the amount of affiliate income that they're making. That's always one comparison that you have to do when you're in the publishing space. And so that'd be one thing we'll notice if I look at your tab and the Macworld, it's still constantly, there's a spinning globe at the top. So there's ads that are constantly being switched out. Constantly there's loading taking place. And that's one of the things I noticed when I was actually navigating around the site myself is I did notice some slow load times of just some very large blank spaces. And then there's ads loaded later on after, multiple 5-6 seconds of being on the site. And, I have really fast internet speeds at my place. So that's another thing that I did take note of when I was navigating around myself.
No, absolutely. I think that they're all very solid and very fair points, Jeremy. So thanks for adding to that as well.
Can we see on Foundry.com, just last thing, we looked at some of the articles, we looked at the homepage, we saw an AI search functionality. Let's go into one of the categories. I'd just be curious if we would actually open up, the iPhone category and then open up on there's a hamburger menu next to the Macworld. So I'd be curious to see what those look like. Like what is hidden in the other item underneath of here. So if we open that hamburger menu, so actually it repeats, right? So it's got Mac, iPhone, iPad, Apple Watch. So that's an interesting thing to me, right? Is there a need to repeat the navigation menu from the top and the left-hand side? I get on the hamburger menu, you're going to want to have that directly for your smaller mobile devices, but it seems a little bit redundant to have it both times, right? There's probably a better utilization of space of what they could have done with that hamburger menu if we're opening it up on the desktop experience.
Yeah, exactly. And I think the key thing as well is double linking, is that going to dilute maybe a little bit more of both the user experience and the priority of the site architecture as well? That can be something else as well, because you can see here, on the non-hamburger menu, how they've really tried to refine and optimize to prioritize the most important sections, which I think has helped them see that 4x jump from 2022 to before September. And now we're seeing here, pretty much they just want to try to add as much as of the categories that they have on their website. So is this a good utilization of the page, of the section? Like you said, that's something that you need to question.
Yeah. No, interesting. I think that there's some good insights and some tips that have been shared directly here. Anything else you want to kind of review or dive deeper into on Macworld.com at the time being?
No, I think I don't think at the moment.
All right, well, that's a good breakdown. So, folks, we hope that there's been a couple different takeaways that you've had directly from the episode. Again, always think about anything that you're doing. Think about it from your user experience. The better your user experience is going to be, the happier they're going to be navigating around on your site, and the better the quality of the content is going to be. Guess what? You're going to get rewarded by not only happier users, but when you have happier users, all of the search engines are going to reward that as well. So quality content is always going to be something that's very, very important. It's never going to go away. That's never going to change. And a quality site experience. So take that away. Be conscious of the ads that you're actually loading on your site and what is actually making your site revenue. So thanks so much, Vahe. This has been great diving into Macworld, and I definitely learned some tips from you. So we hope that the audience learned some things as well.
Likewise, until the next episode. See you guys later.
Bye, everybody.
Special thanks to our sponsors and co-hosts Multidots for contributing to the 7-part WordPress Teardown series. Be sure to subscribe to future episodes at stateofdigitalpublishing.com and join us for a deep dive into our upcoming WordPress Publisher Success Week starting on February 26 by visiting stateofdigitalpublishing.com/WP-week. Until next time.